Duke ball a bowler's dream? Can the Duke's ball survive modern cricket? These are some of the questions we take a look at. Dilip Jajodia on the science of the swing, the craftsmanship that spins test matches. He takes us behind what a Duke's ball is and just why we talk so much about it.
Well, a name several people have spoken of while cooking in their kitchens. We begin our broadcast this morning with our person of interest. She made us rethink diets, embrace ghar ka khana and celebrate local wisdom.
Back in the 2000s, she first entered our bookshelves with Don't Lose Your Mind, Lose Your Weight. Today, Rujuta is amongst the world's most followed nutritionists, and she's back with Meeta Hara, a book that's all about eating with love, not fear. Here's the conversation with the voice of common sense nutrition. Take a look.
Namaste, thank you so much for speaking to us right here on CNN News 18. This is your 11th book, Meeta Hara. How did the entire process happen? Can you tell us what was the inspiration behind this book?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. The inspiration behind this book is the collective wisdom of Indian women and the diverse cooking and cuisines that we have. So while the book captures a lot about the recipes that I have grown up eating, this is actually an ode to every woman who has cooked and who has fed her family with love, you know. So I think that's been the inspiration behind this book. This book came about because I wrote my first book, Don't Lose Your Mind, Lose Your Weight, way back in 2009. So, you know, we often confuse losing weight with not eating correctly. And I hope that this book kind of breaks that image and sends home a message or brings home the message that losing weight is actually about eating correctly, about eating local, seasonal, traditional food, and honoring the time-tested wisdom of eating food with love, attention, and time.
You know, we live in the world of AI, we live in a world of so much of information and not knowing what to do. There's a huge paradox when it comes to especially what is a myth, what is the reality. What do you think in today's day and age is probably the biggest food myth that people tend to follow, which you would like to, in general, not just through this book?
I think one of the biggest myths is that Indian meals are unhealthy. You know, so that's a myth. Indian meals are extremely healthy, not just in the diverse nutrients, but also in taste and flavor. You just need to make them in authentic manner at home.
Yeah.
Eat them in time-tested combinations, portions, and proportions. So don't try and fix what is not broken. You know, the fact that we eat in a diverse manner is wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's the first myth. The second myth that I would like to kind of address is this, that, you know, that cooking is a woman's job. It isn't. It is also something which belongs to all genders, to men especially, and we must raise men and have men, and I think men need to step up here and learn to not just cook but also to source ingredients and clean up after, because that is the basis of a good home where a man contributes in the kitchen. And the third myth would be that only food that has English names or is expensive and even unpronounceable, like maybe avocado, quinoa, berries, and matcha and stuff like that, is healthy, but that's not really the case. Your regular chai, poha, paratha, dal chawal, that's the stuff that you should be eating. Dal chawal power 24-hour, I think, you know.
So eat local, eat ghar ka khana is the best.
Yes.
But you know, there's a little bit about traditional foods that you highlight in your book, especially about green garlic and the forgotten foods. Can you shed light on that? Name a few and tell us.
Well, you know, I mean, right now we are in monsoon, and there is we have a treasure of wild and uncultivated produce in the monsoon, whether it is lingdi, whether it is colocasia leaves or patrode, you know, which I think in north, I'm not sure what it's called, we call it aruvadi, but it's basically basically leaves that just grow in the wild, and then you put besan over it, and then you can either steam them or tawa fry them.
Right.
So there's that. In Maharashtra, we also have something called as the shevra. There are so many wild and uncultivated vegetables right now. Then there is also green garlic, which we have forgotten because we haven't paid cooking the attention that it deserves.
Correct.
But cooking is a skill. It's like driving or cycling. The more you do it, the better you get at it, the lesser time than it requires, or the lesser effort it requires, because it becomes a reflex action then to cook correctly. I also feel that by eating local, seasonal, traditional and the wild and uncultivated foods or the forgotten foods, we will be supporting, because we, the ones who forage them are the vulnerable communities, the women, the Adivasis. And as long as we keep cooking these ingredients in our kitchen, we will continue to support them, because their knowledge of recognizing this in a jungle, their knowledge of bringing this to a local farm deserves applause, deserves support, and also deserves monetary rewards. So we are a culture that eats from our farms and from our forests, and going forward, we, as we go towards maybe being a more progressive nation, we shouldn't forget this part of our lives, that we
should not
eat from
forget our roots.
our roots, and of eating from our farms and our forests.
Is this the advice that you give your multiple clients across spectrums?
Absolutely. Everyone's like, oh, but are you telling this to your celebs? 100%, because see, the physiology is the same. Our environment is the same.
Yeah.
We are all interdependent. We need good soil quality. We need farmers. We need, the skill and the knowledge, the traditional knowledge to forage from our forests to lead a good life. So this advice is for everyone. It's a myth that, that certain people need to eat in a certain way, or that some foods are just for the poor.
Yeah.
These foods are the richest source of nutrients. Unfortunately, they're just not a part of our syllabus, so we don't kind of know of them, but they are a part of our kahanis, our kahawats and our recipes. That is also a form of learning and growing, so we should use that and continue eating these foods in our kitchen.
I love the part where you spoke about cooking and about how men should step in.
Yes.
Let me ask you your personal journey. You've mentioned a little bit in your book about how you started cooking post-pandemic.
Oh yeah.
How has that shifted in your life personally, in the sense, what was it before that?
Well, I would like to believe that, cooking has made me kinder and more empathetic and more understanding. I do feel that you need to mature as a person till you can finally cook.
Yeah.
When you begin to cook, it also helps you grow as a person, but you also have to grow as a person to actually see cooking in its full potential. Otherwise, you keep thinking of cooking as just a menial task, khatam karna hai, a chore. But once you grow in your head and heart, you begin to see it as something which helps you unwind, which keeps communities together, which is a good way to contribute love and affection, amongst family. It's a good way to share love and affection amongst family, and it's a good way to contribute to the health and harmony of our homes. So, I think for a lot of terrible things have happened during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But if there is one good thing that has happened, I think a lot of us returned to our kitchens and traditional cooking. To me, that is the one good takeaway of, that we should try and keep up even in the post-pandemic era.
A lot has been said about diet fads, and you've always been someone who's been against it. Tell me this, is it the same one-fits-all principle? Does it work for women with thyroid, women who are going through issues like PCOD and PCOS, especially the youngsters of today? What is the one piece of advice you would give them?
Oh, I would say to them that if your diet has a name, it is bound to fail. You cannot be on a diet which has a name. It has to be regular local food that you eat at, in proper intervals, so that you're well fueled to pursue your ambitions, whether it is with your career or with your studies or with your relationships or simply with life. Because being on a diet which has a name just means that you're going to be switching that diet sooner or later. So whether it is keto or whether it is IF or whether it is OMAD or whether it is anything else, आज एक कर रहे हो, कल दूसरा करोगे, परसों और तीसरा करोगे, and that's no way to live your life. You can't give so much of your bandwidth to being on a diet. You should be eating well to live well.
But there's a fine line, right, between not wanting to do these diets versus what is actually good for you. So you do believe that these diets don't actually work long term?
No. I think, we are living in a world where sustainability has to be at the core of everything that we do, whether it is business or whether it is health. And we need to adapt strategies and adapt policies and adapt even foods that we can live with and thrive for the next 30 years. In India, each one of us has inherited recipes which have lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years together. I don't even know how old our recipes are. And when you inherit something that has had such a big legacy, I think the only thing that you ought to do is preserve it, practice it, and ensure that it reaches the next generation.
All right, my final question to you, since we have a lack of time
Yes.
here. How have you curated all the recipes in this book? I mean, considering the fact that India is so multicultural and there are so many recipes out there, how have you handpicked a bunch of them here? Can you tell us?
So most of these recipes are the recipes that I cook at home.
Okay.
But they are according to the Indian culture of eating according to every season. So I have structured the book into summer, winter, monsoon,
Seasonal.
change of season, and then of course I have recipes, one for a routine preparation, a celebration, just a snack, a drink, something which is savory, something which is sweet. So that's how I have tried to do it, because these are things which belong to every culture, every community and every region of India.
Absolutely. Thank
Thank
you
very
so much,
much.
Rajita.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, that indeed was a very interesting conversation, and loved how Rujita took us back to how our gut is used to eating what our parents have had all their lives, what our grandparents have had all their lives. So really rooting for seasonal and traditional foods. Love that. All right, we move on with that to how the stray dog debate is back in the spotlight, and this time it's the Supreme Court weighing in with some sharp words for both sides. In a significant order, it upheld citizens' right to feed stray dogs, both inside and outside residential complexes, but also asked the important question, which is, where is the space left for human beings if dogs take over all common areas? It's a question many residents in societies across Delhi NCR are asking, especially with localities facing this problem in an increased manner on a daily basis. Several complaints legally also being filed on a regular basis. For them, stray dogs have become a daily fear. Packs guarding colony gates, chasing children on bicycles, biting cases, dog biting cases in thousands every year. We're learning that about 3,000 plus cases have been reported in the last month alone in Delhi NCR. RWAs call it nothing short of a menace, and that's why we take it up this morning.
But there's a very different side to this entire conversation. Experts who have spent years studying these dogs think very differently. They believe that stray dogs, street dogs, free-ranging dogs, these are some of the different names they're known by, they believe they aren't random wanderers, but they're creatures deeply shaped by centuries of living alongside human beings. Street dogs form territories. They return to the same lanes that they call home, no matter how far they wander. And they belong as much to these spaces as we do. Experts also argue that understanding their behavior is key to creating humane urban spaces, not just for street dogs, but for other species who live with us also.
So where does that leave residents who feel unsafe, who have been victim to dog bites? Can empathy coexist with public safety, or are we asking too much of both dogs and people in an increasingly crowded city?
Okay, so we thought we'd bring in some experts to shed light on this for us. Joining us this morning first to tell us a little bit about the science behind it all, Dr. Aninda Badra joins us from IISER, Kolkata. And Dr. Badra, you were actually the first street dog laboratory ever set up in the country. You've been carrying out years of research since. Dr. Badra, tell us about these animals. What have your studies found? What are the most interesting things that you found about street dogs and their behavior? First tell us that, then we'll ask you more questions.
Okay, good morning. Pleasure to be here. So first, like you said, Toya, street dogs are dogs that live in groups. They are territorial and they defend their territories, which is their home, very, very strongly. So when you see dogs fighting, you hear them barking at night and disturbing your sleep, it's because they are maintaining their territories and telling each other, this is my zone, stay away. They actually live in family groups. In fact, we have found that they are very much like our joint families. Often there would be a mother or a grandmother, there would be uncles and aunts all together taking care of the puppies. So it's a very, very complex social system. And on top of that, they are very good at understanding humans because, we are part of their ecosystem, they are part of our ecosystem. And a lot of studies that we have been doing tell us that they are very, very good at understanding our nuanced social gestures and postures and behaviors. A lot of us dog lovers fall for the puppy eyes when the dog is just looking at you when you're eating something and you throw them a piece of food, and that is how they have survived with us for thousands of years. The earliest stray dogs we get mentioned in the literature goes back to the Mahabharata. So they've been there, we have coexisted, and they have a very good understanding of us. But unfortunately, I feel that we don't often have a good understanding of them yet.
Okay, we do have our second guest this morning as well, and we're going to quickly go across to him. But before that, Dr. Badra, one more question to you before we take in a word from Advocate Sudhindra Bhatt, who joins us this morning. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Quickly ask Dr. Badra this. Dr. Badra, all of this discussion around human-dog equation and how there is so much animosity in residential societies around this issue keeps coming back to light every time there is a dog incident that comes to public domain. They're often sensationalized, and that's what rakes this kind of public anger over such incidents as well. But do you think or not that this, in a way, suppresses the complex equation between human-dog dynamics? Do you think that's often suppressed given the manner in which this news comes out? Or do you think it's fair to feel what people feel?
It is fair to feel what people feel, but sometimes, unfortunately in the media, things get hyped up a lot. And often when actually we have seen some of the local incidents which have been reported, and when we have gone back and tried to see the full picture, often the full picture is not reported. So there are two sides of it. And somehow I feel that over the last couple of decades, we as a community of people have become less and less tolerant of others, not just dogs, but everyone else. We feel that everything just belongs to us, every space is ours. But we have forgotten that, there are species which have been there since much before us, and we really need to coexist with them.
Okay, let's go over now to the advocate to understand more. Advocate Bhatt, tell us, what does the law say about coexisting with street dogs? So what are the existing rules that the Supreme Court has just taken a look at when it comes to how we can interact with them, who can feed them, whose responsibility they are, because those are two different things. Tell us what the law says.
Good morning. The law 2000, the rule 2023 ABC said that the resident can feed the street dogs, but subject to where they have to feed. That should be designated place. that has to be decided. Then who has to do that? The law has to decide that. Designated place means it is not like you can feed the near to the staircase, or where the children are playing, where the elders are walking. This kind of places cannot be done that. But you have to make the designated place. Now, designated place deciding itself is a question mark. Now, is the street dogs are going to be there in that particular place? Question is no. The street dogs are really will be there where the waste, the food items are lying there, or where the food items are there, the street dogs are there. So now you have to look at how to enforce this rule and implement this rule of the Supreme Court's 2023 ABC rules that has to take. The rule is very good, but how to implement is the question mark.
Okay.
So who has to take the responsibility of this? Should the municipality should take the responsibility, or the council or should take the responsibility, or the law should take the responsibility, or the citizen should take the responsibility, or there is no ABC, the birth control of the animals are not there, should they take the responsibility of that? Now, as my other co-panelist told that, it is the media hyping. It is not a media hyping. It is nothing but we are not taking the responsibility of the dog control or dog breeding. So that has to be taken control.
Okay.
The control should be with the, how do we make the funding of that? Is there enough fund to control this?
Okay, so the law, Mr. Bhatt, does have a certain protocol in place. The law most certainly doesn't differentiate between animal welfare and public safety, but how to go about these measures, vaccination, sterilization, how to ensure that post these measures, these community dogs are left back, are sent back to their places of origin. All of that you're saying is still in a grey area. All of that hasn't been figured out. Is that right?
Yes, you're right. It is not figured out. We have a rule with us, but we don't know how to proceed with that. For example, enforcement and implementation is the real issues we are going to face. How to do that? Then, is local authorities having enough capacity? Now, once the sterilization is done, where the dog has to be? Should be the same, the locality, as we say that the dog is also a community of ours, community animal we talk, should be there, or should be there in rehab center? Is there enough facilities there in the rehab center? That's a question mark. Then recognition and oversight. So how do we recognize? So the Animal Welfare Society is really doing good, or are they really authorized to take care of that? Are they a registered firm, or are they registered NGOs? Where the room for that? We don't know. The rule is there, ABC, the animal birth control rule is there. Is it only for the street dogs, or is it for some other things? Why only street dogs are question marked every time? Because the street dogs are attacking on the human or any child or anybody because they are hunger. They have fear about the humans and they are abuse. So you and me, normally, what we do, you will throw the stone on that.
Right.
And obviously, it's the abuse of the street dogs.
So,
you cannot do that. What they
Advocate-
do other than attacking on the human or the child? Question mark is how to address this. The
So
law
let's
is not
understand exactly that, Advocate Bhatt. I like that you're taking this question to, okay, how do we address it? That's really the key. And let's go over to Dr. Badra to understand exactly that. Dr. Badra, I just want to ask you, some have said, and I just want to read a quote, that every dog should be a pet dog. And I want to understand if you agree with that philosophy, or do you have your studies found that that the street is genuinely the home for dogs? What has your science found? Tell us that, and then tell us if that's the answer. If streets are the ideal place for street dogs, how do we make this a world that is a better place for street dogs and for the humans and for the other animals? We're not talking about cows. We're not talking about the several other animals that inhabit our spaces.
Good question, because that is one perspective, that dogs belong to people's homes. We have to remember that people started bringing dogs inside their homes 300 years or 400 years ago. Dogs had existed on the streets for centuries before that, and they've done pretty well. Now, then a lot of people will say that a lot of countries the countries in the global north don't have street dogs. What's the problem? Yes, they don't. They also don't have a lot of people living on the streets. They don't have open gutters. They don't have the level of poverty that we do. All of that is associated. We have to understand that. Street dogs are scavengers. They remove a lot of garbage that we throw on the streets. And you would notice this, that usually often these conflict situations are reported mostly in urban areas, mostly in gated communities, where we have learned to live in a hygienic manner and we are managing our garbage properly, where there are no longer garbage on the road or stray food on the road, and there the scavenging behavior of the dog no longer sates their hunger, right? So on the one hand, they are scavengers. They will look for food and eat on scraps, and they'll survive. They are healthy when they are doing that, because they're eating and then they're using their energy and they're scavenging and they're mating and they're fighting. But when they don't get food while scavenging, then the question becomes, then do we take the responsibility of feeding them? And the simple answer is, I think we should. But the question is, feeding how? Because the dogs, as I said, are territorial. As the co-panelists said, that where will you feed the dogs? Where the dogs are, or where we want them to be. And the question is, our studies show us that the dogs will actually make their territories around the place where there is the most food. And because they're territorial, if you want all dogs from different groups to come and eat at a place like like a canteen, there are going to be fights. And they will fight over this food, and they will fight over the spot as their territory. So this is where a lot of fights can actually start. And a lot of conflict between humans and dogs can also start. So firstly, no, dogs evolutionarily do not belong inside homes. They are not really domestic animals like the cows or the goats, which we have domesticated for a purpose. Dogs, in fact, science says that probably dogs domesticated us before we domesticated them. So there has been a coevolution between the species, and the current understanding is probably, ancestral dogs came to us and started following us around and started hanging around with us, much like the street dogs of today do. So then, what right do we have to, decide what is good for them? And the other issue I will just briefly mention here is that there are too many dogs. And again, if we have time, maybe we can come back to this. There are probably too many dogs because, as we see from our data, when there are too much resources, dogs will come there. And if you go to rural areas, dogs are much more sparse because there aren't that many resources.
But do you think we also need to, Dr. Badra, then focus on, and this is a follow-up to what you're saying, focus on a model like Netherlands, for instance. You've not rooted for it really. You're not really suggesting that we get rid of this entire stray dog culture. But then they've managed to achieve something so great wherein this problem is not really an issue they're facing at the moment. They've achieved a nearly stray dog free space, which has helped them overall, and they've done it with great care. So they've really pursued initiatives like sterilization, vaccination, wholeheartedly adopted it, and that's resulted in a great way in terms of the overall satisfaction of residential societies as well. Would you suggest something like that? And if yes, how difficult that's going to be, for instance, for India?
Okay, as a scientist who studies stray dogs, I will definitely say no, because then we disrupt the ecosystem in which they belong. Again, our studies show that dogs are a very, very important part of our urban ecosystem. They are there, it's like the Pied Piper story. We can remove all dogs by using proper protocols. But then are you going to be also removing the rats? Because they actually keep the rats under check. So it's, as I said, it's an ecosystem. We see the dogs. We don't see the others. So the dogs are not just interacting with you. They are also interacting with other parts of the ecosystem. And ecology says that if you remove one important hub from the ecosystem, everything will come crashing down eventually. And dogs are really important nodes in our ecosystem, which all the data shows. And if you remove them, then others will come and take up their space. Ecosystem will not remain vacant, and you are going to come up with a different urban problem probably.
Okay. Advocate Bhatt had a point earlier. Advocate, you were putting your finger up.
Yes, I have to say that the Supreme Court, the rule is very nice. It is the answer to the previous question of yours. See, the ABC rules say that sterilization, vaccination, and as well as human approach to the dog, it may be street dog or any animals, and also say that community, the animal, treat the street dog as a community animal, and human approach to the dog conflict resolution, and as well as join the efforts to local body in implementation of something. By default, you cannot avoid the street dogs from Indian streets. It may be any kind of village or urban or anywhere. You cannot avoid it. But how to manage it? So that we have to see that. To manage that, as I say that, we have to give a sufficient amount of resources for the municipalities. It may be, when I say resources, two things. One is the financial resources, and another one is the human resources has to be given that. So for that, the proper policy need to be there. Then, as you told, like Netherlands, we can also implement the street dogs, and we are not eradicating them or we are not removing them, but we are giving the better facility and better way of treating them like a human. We can do that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Advocate Bhatt, we weren't actually asking you to end there, but I'll take this moment to ask Dr. Badra a question. You were talking right now about how do we take care of the street dogs, and Dr. Badra, earlier you were saying there are a lot of them. Again, we'll pull up a number, 60 million plus street dogs. Plus is important there because I think many believe the number is much larger. It is already definitely double the size of the Australian human population. That's how many street dogs we have. Dr. Badra, I just want to ask you, a lot of animal lovers in the winters, they'll put out coats for dogs, they'll go feed dogs. I want to understand, if there are animal lovers watching today, what are animal lovers doing wrong when it comes to trying to take care of the street dogs around them?
Yeah, so I am an animal lover, that's why I study animals. But then again, from the neutral perspective of science, often our interference reduces their mortality, and we don't want my favorite dog to die, so we do it out of love. But we have to keep in mind that that also adds to the problem of being too many dogs. So how do you balance that? So in the ideal world, I would say non-interference. I grew up seeing my grandfather give all the leftovers from his plate to the dogs and the cats in the community, and we all did the same. And that is how we have survived. And the dogs have survived, the stray cats have survived, the crows have survived. Because, everyone does their little bit. But often now it is the dog lovers versus dog haters. And some people are overdoing it. Some people are overdoing the aggression towards dogs. And there is pretty much a war zone out there on our streets. So coexistence, tolerance, and, balanced caregiving is what would lead to reduction of the problem of increasing populations, because the natural mortality will set.
Okay, we have, I think, the last minute on the show before we quickly wrap up. Advocate Bhatt, if you were to sum this up and suggest one regulation, something that can be adopted legally, which is going to help the situation improve, what would that be? Because it's no longer just a street dog problem. There are pet dogs who've bitten small children in gated societies. That turns out to be very ugly too. What is that one-stop solution that we must go for next?
The Section 291 of BNS say that negligent conduct with the repeat to the animals, individual, in taking any kind of measures. So it will be punishable offense. So I say that we had to bring the awareness of the negligent act of any individuals. So in our own, in the Article 51 say that the animal rights, and also say that, Article 21 say that like you and me, we have a right, they also have a right to live. But the question is, how do we educate the individual? It may be pet dog owners or the street dog, whoever feeding for that. How to educate them? The responsibility matters a lot. Who does that? They should have their own responsibility. If it is their own kid or somebody bids, how do they react? So if that part is answered, the meaning is we have to educate. We have a law which is really protecting, and we have a rules and regulation which is really taking care of that. But awareness in the society, it is very, very less. So I advise saying that let the raw educate their own society. Let the municipality take the education, their own the districts or taluka or tahsil, whatever it is, let them do it. And the government support the different way, let the awareness program be there, automatically all these kind of issues may be solved automatically. Otherwise,
that's going to be a long process. Advocate, that's going to be a long process. Spreading awareness, helping people or ensuring that people learn how to coexist is going to be a difficult one, because let's admit to one thing, that if someone's child gets bitten by a dog, it hurts, and that's where logic doesn't really go through. So that's one thing we're all going to have to understand and also accept. But yes, when it comes to feeding dogs, perhaps greater accountability and structure is the way forward. But thank you so much.
Literally, street dogs right from the Mahabharata are living with us.
Yeah.
So we've documented it through the years. We'd like to thank both our guests for joining us. Right now, we're going to head into a quick break. On the other side, we shift focus entirely. Why the Duke's ball splits opinions. We're taking you to the world of cricket, and we understand, especially if you're a cricket beginner, this next segment is for you. What makes the Duke's ball a bowler's dream, and can the Duke's ball survive modern cricket? We actually have Dilip Jajodia talking about the science of the swing. Stay with us.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Prioritizing the country over anything else. He was quoted as saying that there are national interests that go above party interests, even though there are ideologies that dictate parties. Now, senior Congress leader K. Muralidharan has reacted sharply to what Shashi Tharoor said, declaring that the party has given up on Tharoor, announcing that he would be barred from party events in Thiruvananthapuram, from where he is actually an MP, until he aligns his party's stance. The BJP has quickly seized of this situation, slamming Congress for its obsession with family politics, accusing the party of sidelining leaders like Tharoor for voicing support for the country's national security.
അല്ല അദ്ദേഹം കാര്യം ഞങ്ങൾ വിട്ടല്ലോ. ഇപ്പം അദ്ദേഹം ഞങ്ങളെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ കൂടിയതായി ഞങ്ങൾ കണക്കാക്കുന്നില്ല. അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ നടപടി വേണോ വേണ്ടെന്നുള്ള ദേശീയ നേതൃത്വം തീരുമാനിക്കട്ടെ. അദ്ദേഹം നിലപാട് തിരുത്താത്തോളം കാലം തിരുവനന്തപുരത്ത് പാർട്ടിയുടെ ഒരു പരിപാടിയിലും അദ്ദേഹത്തിനെ ഞങ്ങൾ പങ്കെടുപ്പിക്കില്ല. അദ്ദേഹം ബഹിഷ്കരിക്കുക. അദ്ദേഹം ഞങ്ങളുടെ കൂടെ ഇല്ല, പിന്നെ എന്തിനാ ബഹിഷ്കരിക്കുന്നത്?
We have certain values and convictions that keep us in our parties, but we need to cooperate with other parties in the interests of national security, the question you asked. Sometimes the parties feel that is disloyal to them, and that becomes a big problem. Which is your first loyalty? To my mind, the nation comes first. A safer India, an India whose borders are protected, whose territory is safe, whose people's well-being can be nurtured. And that is my commitment. And if we hold that ideal up, a lot of people have been very critical of me because of the stand I've taken supporting our armed forces and our government and what happened recently in our country and on our borders. But I will stand my ground because I believe this is the right thing for the country.
Now, we're learning from the Congress party that the party itself has not taken any decision yet if it has to distance itself from Tharoor. They're considering Mr. Muralidharan's viewpoint as his own personal opinion, but the problem is that it has been voiced in public and he has almost made an announcement that Shashi Tharoor is no longer part of them. Pallavi Ghosh, my colleague, joining us with more on this. Pallavi, this is the internal rift, but also the internal conflict on the issue of Shashi Tharoor kind of becoming very apparent. The party leadership doesn't want to be seen as taking any decision against Tharoor, but local leaders are not keeping quiet.
Absolutely, and Shivani, I think it best captures the dilemma within the Congress party. They can't live with Shashi Tharoor, they can't live without Shashi Tharoor, and that is the reason why the Congress is having to think many times over before taking any action against him. Well, what we are picking up from top Congress sources is one, Murugan's comments are his own. It doesn't come from any official position. There is no reason why we should be believing or accepting what he's saying. And the second thing is that the Congress party has to make up its mind yet on whether they want to take any action against Shashi Tharoor or not. Now look at the issue that he's picked up, that is of national security, of nationalism. That is an issue on the basis of which they feel that Shashi Tharoor cannot be slighted, he cannot be facing any kind of an action because it is only going to go back and hitting out at the Congress. And that is the reason why the Congress sources are telling us that as of now, they have not made up their mind. They don't plan to take any action against Shashi Tharoor. They are waiting and watching to see. And it is by and large an issue being raised by the Kerala unit of the Congress party, where clearly the dissent is very, very obvious. There's an anger against Shashi Tharoor because they feel that these kind of comments will only end up hurting the party's chances in the 2026 state assembly elections.
Right. Pallavi, this is of course becoming almost an untenable situation. What's the mind of the senior leaders of the Congress party and on ground? This boycott of sorts that is being talked about by the Congress leaders. Do you think it will go ahead, even if not in letter, but in spirit? And how is Mr. Shashi Tharoor likely to take this?
Well, I mean, in fact, we saw it inside the parliament. When I was roaming around inside parliament, I also saw that particular glimpse where K.C. Venugopal did interact with Shashi Tharoor. Clearly, the party also wants to send out this kind of a perception that, we are all in it together. We are not hurting any of us and hating each other. And I think that best captures the kind of problem which the Congress party faces, on why they cannot take any action against Shashi Tharoor and why they also feel that the issues that we are raising are the ones which will give a huge ammunition to the BJP should they take any action. But this is very clear. He was seen hobnobbing more with the BJP leaders today than with the Congress party. So as far as the Congress is concerned, he's being seen as a bit of a pariah.
Right. Just as a pun, is it a lost case really as far as the Congress party is concerned? We'll have to wait and see because a lot...
Welcome back to the Breakfast Club, and now we take you to the world of sports, where as India gears up for the fourth test, the debate over the Duke's ball has once again taken centre stage. CNN News 18's Sanjay Suri caught up with Dilip Jajodia, the man behind the Duke's ball, to talk about it.
He weighed in on the controversy. What makes his creation a bowler's best friend? Listen into this very interesting conversation.
Dilip, we've had some persistent complaints that the Duke's ball has been losing shape far too quickly.
Well, the thing about shape, it's a perception in the eye of the beholder, isn't it?
So is that in the eye of the beholder or in the hands of the bowler?
In the good old days, if a ball was supposedly out of shape, the player would take it to the umpire, and the umpire, would look at it and use his wisdom because he's obviously a cricketer who's played before, and he looks at it and he says, "Yeah, that's fine, I'll change it," or he says, "No, get on with it." Now, because of the frequent overyears, all balls, people go to the umpire and then the umpire says, "No, get on with it." And then there's a bit of an argument. So the ICC have decreed that the way to judge whether a ball is in shape or not is to try and put it through the rings. I don't know whether there are two rings, the small ring and the big ring. And so if it doesn't go through the big ring, it's deemed to be out of shape. And therefore, the request for a change is accepted. But the ball might not be out of shape, but that is the case, right? Now, as far as the laws of cricket are concerned, my obligation as a manufacturer is to make sure that the ball goes through the big ring and not through the small ring when it's new. The fact that it doesn't go through when it's large, that's a regulation stipulation. That's not a legal aspect. So we make the ball to a standard. We still make it to the British standard. And we use all the materials and all the small little nuances of size and weight and everything else to that standard.
Has something changed in the way the ball is manufactured or the materials it is manufactured with?
No, there's nothing has changed. But the problem is that the raw materials are natural materials. So we make it out of leather, and then the insides are cork and rubber and so on. These are all natural materials. The thread, these are all linen thread, and then of course you've got human beings, and the product is entirely handmade. So there's no sort of machine consistency. And in fact, in my view, a machine stitched ball, there's another brand in the market. The two outer rows are just machine stitched, but it's only held together with the middle row. So in fact, in my view, the seam goes flat, and it's not really good enough for international cricket. But it's widely used because there's no seam, it might go through the big ring. So the fact that it might not be a good enough ball, but because it goes through the ring, it's deemed to be okay.
Are bowlers then using all this as an excuse?
Well, it's very difficult. I can't accuse anybody or make statements against the bowlers or whatever. I can only observe as an ex-player, only a club cricketer, but I've been around in the game a very long time. Things evolve, pressures are there. When somebody gets selected, out of 1.5 billion people in India, 11 guys are on the pitch. So they're there for a reason. They've been picked as the best. So therefore, the pressures are on. And of course, if they feel that they're not getting the assistance that they want and so on, they will be tempted to complain about it. And that's why the umpire is there to look at the ball and now put it through the ring. And if it doesn't go through the big ring, it should be changed. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the ball is either soft or out of shape or whatever. But those are the regulations. So therefore, the umpire has to take action.
The number of complaints has risen of late. So is it something other than the ball, or is it the ball?
Well, it can't just be one thing in cricket, can it? There's so many different variables. This year, for example, when the Indian team arrived, it was actually hotter in London than it was in India. So it's very warm here, comparatively speaking. The pitches are pretty hard and dry. And as I pointed out, bats have evolved over the last few years where the players are not only more skillful, perhaps, but they're much stronger, and they are hitting the ball out of the playing area, into the seats and the stands and so on more often. And the ball is subject to getting damaged. I'm not talking about falling apart, but every time it hits something hard and outside the playing surface, it must affect it.
If it's the case that the batsmen now are hitting the ball too hard, is that then retrospectively rude to the likes of Gary Sobers?
Yes, it could be. You see, I think that the situation now with the sort of performance, I see the ball hasn't changed at all. The specification is exactly the same. And there have been quite a few changes that have been going on, as I was saying, about players' fitness and the bats and so on. So, the ball is changed at 80 overs. And that's a pretty well all day it has to last, and being bashed all the time. So I think it's a situation where, who knows, we need to perhaps, the people who run the game need to consider, give it some thought. Is this time to review certain things that we should try and improve, reduce the number of overs when the ball can be changed, or, ask us who make the balls, is there anything we can suggest that might make it harder wearing, that sort of thing, So I'm open for discussion all the time, but my main concern is that I will always make the ball to a standard. Otherwise, it becomes a nightmare. You can't vary just because somebody says, oh, it's going soft, so you try and make it harder. That would be disastrous.
All right, and now we are taking you to the roads. We're shifting focus to the world of auto. It's bold, it's electric, and it's making waves. What we have for you is Tata's 2025 Harrier EV, and it promises a lot, at least on paper.
Does it really deliver on performance, on tech, and most importantly on value? Overdrives takes it for a spin and breaks it all down for you. Take a look.
By now you already know that the Tata Harrier EV is priced from ₹21.49 lakh. You know all the tech it packs. You also know that it can handle itself decently well off-road. But you don't know what it's actually like to drive or live with in the real world, which is exactly what we're going to tell you in this video. Out in the open, the Tata Harrier EV doesn't shout its presence like some rivals. Tata Motors has decided to pepper the ICE Harrier styling with its usual EV touches. So you will find a blanked out grille with the rich pattern, blue highlighting and the white Tata logo.
The ADAM sees the Tata EV graded patterns also seen on the Curve and Nexon EVs.
Now you get a frunk with the Harrier EV, even though this isn't what you would traditionally call a skateboard born electric platform, but you do get a frunk. And it's 17 kgs of weight limit and a 35 litre volume. But as you can see, it's quite shallow, so a backpack is a bit difficult to fit, but you will be able to fit the charging cable sort of box. And I must say there's this neat sort of Easter egg, if you want to call it, made in an all-woman assembly line, the plant that the Harrier EV is made in Pune. So it's a nice nod to that.
Now we did find some of the clipped-on parts of the Tata Harrier's exterior like the fuel filler cover and the keyhole to be loosely fitted, but otherwise the panel gaps were more consistent than what we've seen from Tata Motors earlier. Now one of the most striking additions over the standard Harrier are these large 19-inch aero-optimized wheels. They wrap around some chunky EV-specific rubber and give the Harrier EV a smart stance. That said, we did notice the gloss black panels around the glass area becoming scuffed by the new ultra-wideband keycard access. But you do get some neat quad-wheel drive badges on the D-pillar. The rear is similar to the standard Harrier with the familiar rich pattern for the bumpers being the only change. So the Harrier EV has the presence and sharp styling of a modern SUV.
Now accessing the boot of the Harrier EV is not as straightforward as I would have liked, to be honest, because to make this rear sort of powered tailgate work, you either have to have the key in your hand or have the car completely turned off, which I think is going to be a bit of a hassle, say if you're driving up to a hotel where your bags need to be checked and so on. But anyway, once you do open it, you will find that there is a bit of a ledge because that's hiding the spare wheel. So I think it's a fair compromise to make. Yes, the lip becomes very high in that regard. And while you do have 504 litres on paper, that's been measured to the roof. So in practicality, you can sort of put, say, 3 bags side by side, reasonably sized trolleys and a couple of maybe backpacks. So I think you will be able to manage a weekend trip.
Now you've already seen that the Tata Harrier EV is fairly capable in the rough stuff. It's got an on-demand all-wheel drive system with its dual motor setup and 6 terrain modes that will get you out of steep inclines and slushy roads fairly easily in the real world. The new independent suspension setup also gives you good articulation in the rough. But in the real world, you will be more interested in what it's like to actually spend time inside the Harrier EV.
Now, if you're familiar with the regular Harrier, then the interiors of the Harrier EV will not come as too much of a surprise. So Tata Motors has done more or less whatever it does whenever it moves one of its cars into an EV version. So yeah, you will find that you have a lot of these sort of the Tata EV themes, for example, a lot of the blue and off-white texturing. But the overall design and layout of the cabin is more or less the same. I must say that the
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Prioritizing the country over anything else. He was quoted as saying that there are national interests that go above party interests, even though there are ideologies that dictate parties. Now, senior Congress leader K. Muralidharan has reacted sharply to what Shashi Tharoor said, declaring that the party has given up on Tharoor, announcing that he would be barred from party events in Thiruvananthapuram, from where he is actually an MP, until he aligns his party's stance. The BJP has quickly seized of this situation, slamming Congress for its obsession with family politics, accusing the party of sidelining leaders like Tharoor for voicing support for the country's national security.
അല്ല അദ്ദേഹം ഞങ്ങൾ വിട്ടല്ലോ. ഇപ്പം അദ്ദേഹം ഞങ്ങളെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ കൂടിയതായി ഞങ്ങൾ കണക്കാക്കുന്നില്ല. അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ നടപടി വേണോ വേണ്ടെന്നുള്ള ദേശീയ നേതൃത്വം തീരുമാനിക്കട്ടെ. അദ്ദേഹം നിലപാട് തിരുത്താത്തോളം കാലം തിരുവനന്തപുരത്ത് പാർട്ടിയുടെ ഒരു പരിപാടിയിലും അദ്ദേഹത്തിനെ ഞങ്ങൾ പങ്കെടുപ്പിക്കില്ല. അദ്ദേഹം ബഹിഷ്കരിക്കുക. അദ്ദേഹം ഞങ്ങളുടെ കൂടെ ഇല്ല, പിന്നെ എന്തിനാ ബഹിഷ്കരിക്കുന്നത്?
We have certain values and convictions that keep us in our parties, but we need to cooperate with other parties in the interests of national security, the question you asked. Sometimes the parties feel that is disloyal to them, and that becomes a big problem. Which is your first loyalty? To my mind, the nation comes first. A safer India, an India whose borders are protected, whose territory is safe, whose people's well-being can be nurtured. And that is my commitment. And if we hold that ideal up, a lot of people have been very critical of me because of the stand I've taken supporting our armed forces and our government and what happened recently in our country and on our borders. But I will stand my ground because I believe this is the right thing for the country.
Now we're learning from the...
All right, next we bring you a special section on financial markets powered by Money Control Pro, Money Control's premium destination for investing and business insights. Let's take a look at an overview first. GIFT Nifty trends are indicating a stable opening for Indian stock markets. Asian stock markets edged higher in morning trade on hopes of political stability in Japan. US stock markets closed higher on buying in shares of large companies. Crude oil prices are subdued as traders weigh global demand conditions.
And talking about the online food delivery sector in particular, it saw softer demand in the June quarter, but quick commerce is delivering despite growing competition. The event ticketing vertical also looks promising. Competition is intense though, and the main question is whether margins will come under pressure. Log in to Money Control Pro to find out more about India's quick commerce industry and other actionable insights on markets. It is the premier destination for all investing views and financial insights you will ever need, brought to you by Money Control.
And with that, we're bringing our show to a close. Tomorrow, we're taking a look at, or we're returning rather to one of our favorite topics, AI and ChatGPT, but in a slightly different way. And we're going to take you, we don't want to tell you too much, but we're actually wading into the world of romance with the machine. What are we talking about? Well, we'll tell you tomorrow. For now, though, that's all.
Thank you, and always open to suggestions. So please feel free to text us what you think we should cover on The Breakfast Club. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Two nations, one agenda, asserting Bharat's place in an evolving global order. A visit to take Indo-UK ties to new heights.
And reset ties with Maldives after new lows. Live and immersive coverage of the Prime Minister's 3-day visit and his twin-track diplomacy. With me, Aman Sharma in Malé.
And me, Anand Narasimhan in London. Live and exclusive. 23rd to the 26th of July, only on CNN News 18.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Prioritizing the country over anything else. He was quoted as saying that there are national interests that go above party interests, even though there are ideologies that dictate parties. Now, senior Congress leader K. Muralidharan has reacted sharply to what Shashi Tharoor said, declaring that the party has given up on Tharoor, announcing that he would be barred from party events in Thiruvananthapuram, from where he is actually an MP, until he aligns his party's stance. The BJP has quickly seized of this situation, slamming Congress for its obsession with family politics, accusing the party of sidelining leaders like Tharoor for voicing support for the country's national security.
അല്ല അദ്ദേഹം കാര്യം ഞങ്ങൾ വിട്ടല്ലോ. ഇപ്പം അദ്ദേഹം ഞങ്ങളെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ കൂടിയതായി ഞങ്ങൾ കണക്കാക്കുന്നില്ല. അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ നടപടി വേണോ വേണ്ടെന്നുള്ള ദേശീയ നേതൃത്വം തീരുമാനിക്കട്ടെ. അദ്ദേഹം നിലപാട് തിരുത്താത്തോളം കാലം തിരുവനന്തപുരത്ത് പാർട്ടിയുടെ ഒരു പരിപാടിയിലും അദ്ദേഹത്തിനെ ഞങ്ങൾ പങ്കെടുപ്പിക്കില്ല. അദ്ദേഹം ബഹിഷ്കരിക്കുക. അദ്ദേഹം ഞങ്ങളുടെ കൂടെ ഇല്ല, പിന്നെ എന്തിനാണ് ബഹിഷ്കരിക്കുന്നത്?
We have certain values and convictions that keep us in our parties, but we need to cooperate with other parties in the interests of national security, the question you asked. Sometimes the parties feel that is disloyal to them, and that becomes a big problem. Which is your first loyalty? To my mind, the nation comes first. A safer India, an India whose borders are protected, whose territory is safe, whose people's well-being can be nurtured. And that is my commitment. And if we hold that ideal up, a lot of people have been very critical of me because of the stand I've taken supporting our armed forces and our government and what happened recently in our country and on our borders. But I will stand my ground because I believe this is the right thing for the country.